three of us here today, which is different than normal. We've got guest host Rebecca McDowell, who's the CEO and founder of Migo, and Deborah Whitby, who is the CEO and not really founder. We'll talk about that in a second, of Austin Plumbery. Two amazing entrepreneurial women who I have met here in Austin over the last couple of years. I am the advisor to Migo, Becca's company. And Deborah and I'm just kind of fascinated with what she's done with the business. So I wanted to bring all of us together because I think there's some really interesting synergies in kind of how we each think about what we're doing, what we're trying to grow, the challenges we're facing, even though like the three things we're doing, our businesses are quite different. So with that, let's start with you, Deborah. Austin Plumbery.
Yeah.
It's a plumbing business.
It's a plumbing company. Yeah.
It's a plumbing company. Yeah. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So it's local, obviously in Austin. I started it, and I know you said we'll talk about kind of the origins of it, but back in 2016. So this April will be 9 years. And yeah, we're residential commercial services here in Austin. We do, in the years we've shied away now from new construction as much. So we do just kind of your traditional repairs, replacements, things like that. And, minor remodels. So that's where we're at.
So you run plumbers.
I run plumbers.
Yeah.
Plumbers don't run me.
Yeah. And Rebecca, you're the CEO and founder of Migo, which is an app.
Yep. It is. It's a platform, so web-based platform. We're not like a mobile app yet. We do intend to be a mobile app in the future. But essentially, we launched our beta 2 months ago, and we have tilted our focus towards the real estate industry because essentially what our platform does, it's a digital wallet for all of your recommended pros. So think of like an Apple Wallet has credit cards. Instead, you would have a list of everyone that you typically recommend. So for real estate agents, they refer plumbers, they refer HVAC, roofing. I mean, you're in the industry, Deborah, so you understand how many intricacies there are of who they typically refer out to their clients. And so we give them one centralized, organized way of referring these people, and it brings more business to the vendors who are listed within that wallet too, because it gives their clients and it gives their networks continuous access to contact you guys directly, as opposed to like having to do text and Facebook groups and Slack channels, which is usually what's used right now by a lot of brokers and real estate agents. So we've had a lot of interest of different brokers here in Austin who love the idea. We're finishing some user experience stuff to get them onboarded, but I think it'll be a really great help and useful tool to bring more business to vendors like you because you're directly in contact with those people who need to hire you. So that's what we do.
And for people that don't know, my business that actually makes money is Keenan Reed Strategies, which is a consulting business primarily for kind of billion to $10 billion P&L owners. We staff whoever with whatever. We make stuff simple. Yeah. Just go look it up. Okay. It's boring. Now back to plumbing. So Deborah, how did you get into this?
Yeah. So my dad has been a plumber growing up. When I was, that was his trade, his job. So he's always worked for different plumbing companies growing up. And then eventually when I was maybe in high school, he went out on his own and started doing his, he got his master's, has been doing his own thing. And then when I was out of college, I started teaching high school there in Austin. And, but then, 2 years in, I had my son. And so I was just kind of like, okay, I need more money, more flexibility. I was starting to look at options like opening my own, eyelash studio. You don't know it right now. I just took my eyelashes off, but I let them go. But, eyelash extension studio. I was like just exploring all the options. And my dad, again, was just his own guy on a truck with a magnet on the side, has been in the business so many years. We're local, we're from Austin. So he knew a lot of people here. And that did well. That put me through private school, everything like that. But at some point I was like, maybe, my husband at the time was like, hey, why don't you just help your dad do his invoicing and things like that? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to leave my career for something, just on a whim. It needs to be more established. So my dad was like graceful enough to just say like, hey, I've never wanted to scale a business. I'm content with exactly how it is. I love plumbing, the trade itself. But he gave me that opportunity to, turn it into, just kind of gave me free reign to do whatever I wanted. If I wanted to try it, let me try it. So, so in 2016, I basically I only asked him it was like $496, but I'd say $500 just to start a new business account. Because another part of it was like his client base at the time, they knew him. His name is Joe. So it's like Joe the plumber, right?
Yeah.
And he would go in there and just be like, oh, no, $75. Oh, I could do that for $100. And I'm like, we're not going to do that because we're never going to survive. So, I didn't want a lot of his client base at the time because I just knew it was going to be a barrier into like reacclimating them to, actual like market prices. So I actually just took on home warranty companies at the start, and I was like, let them keep calling you. I got a business line. I just did something totally apart from his current client base. And so it's like part of the book of business that I took wasn't the residents, it was the home warranty companies, just so I could start getting in homes while we established the new brand. And we started as a different name. He had a DBA. He didn't even have an LLC. So like I started it as a name, and then a couple years into it, we had enough money to, pay for a whole rebrand and stuff.
So how did you, talk me through the first 6 months. You're like, I'm going to go do this. Did you have like entrepreneurial experience from when you were younger? Like, have you always been programmed this way? Like the fact to me that you were like, okay, let me go establish a channel as your first move suggests some level of sophistication. That's not luck. So what in your background kind of led to that being one of your first moves?
Yeah. I think that, no, I think I was very I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Like I always knew I wanted to go to a certain college in the city and, things like that. So but my grandfather, I guess I would even say my dad is like entrepreneur. Like he eventually just went out on his own. So I've been, I guess maybe I would say, my grandfather was entrepreneurial with real estate, like investing, things like that. So I guess I would just say that I was used to them being their own boss to some extent, and my dad coming home and he would show me all his money. I mean, we have so many pictures of my dad, like fanning money. And I'm like, how much, when I was younger, I would say, well, like how much do you have to pay your boss? Cash. Yeah. And he's like, I am the boss, So like, I think there was maybe that mentality that's like, oh, if you're your own boss, you keep all of it. You don't have to, pay. So but yeah, I think honestly, when I was looking into, like I said, starting a boutique and then an eyelash studio. At that time, I was just, I had a traditional education. So I was just really learning everything I could. I went to the city of Austin, the entrepreneurial, classes that they have, small business classes. And I was just soaking up information and truthfully just learning. And again, my dad did already have the home warranty companies. He had one. And so I was like, okay. He was like, well, you could start with the home warranty if that's, if you don't want any of because I was like, great, I have a new plumbing company. It's Monday. Nobody knows I exist. Like, what am I going to do on Tuesday? Right. And so I'm like,
I feel like that every Monday, by the way.
Yeah.
No one knows I exist.
Oh my God. So that's why I was like, okay, well, let me take that channel, which was the home warranty company. But then I didn't know there was like so many other, he just had one because he didn't need, to be trying to get. So I found other home warranty companies and just basically filled out vendor applications with them, after I had insurance and all that stuff and got them set up. And I mean, they start sending you business immediately. So I was fortunate in that regard. But I mean, that's true for any trade. They can all get set up with home warranty companies and become vendors, to just immediately start getting business. And then, of course, those homeowners, now you're in homes, eventually they cancel their insurance policy. So they just call you because you were the last plumber that was there. And and it really just kind of grew from there.
That's fantastic. Okay. So you start doing that. And then eventually you say, okay, now we've how did you make the decision? Okay. I'm curious about when you chose to invest, because like you said, you grew up fanning money. Plumbing is a high cash. I mean, business, and it's a pretty lucrative business. Like I was telling you when we met before, I know two friends of mine came from families of plumbing, and they had tons of money, right? Like I think people think like, oh, it's a trade, sometimes dealing with literal shit. But so you're used to this cash flow. When did you make the decision to turn some of those earnings into investments? I know you invested in marketing. What was that thought process like? Because I feel like that's the next point in the entrepreneurial journey where you're saying, okay, I've made it. This is sustainable. It's funding and it's working enough. How do I take a risk and then put what could be mine back into something with an semi-unknown outcome?
Yeah. I think I had a dollar amount that I felt comfortable with to see in the bank account. And I mean, frankly, it wasn't a lot. It was $50,000. And so I just wanted to see at least $50,000 in a bank account, in the business
savings,
bank account.
Not cash flow.
Pardon?
Savings though, not cash flow.
No, just like cash in my checking account.
Okay.
Like I just wanted it to accumulate, because again, I started with $500 in there. So then, our first, bit of business was doing the home warranties. Okay. Yeah. We were getting little deposits, and so I was like, this just needed to accumulate in my little brain for $50,000. That made me feel, it's different for everyone where they're going to feel safe, but that felt safe for me at that time. So once the business checking account literally had $50,000, then I was like, okay, now I have a little bit of a cushion here to start getting a logo. And honestly, I was like going to be just on Fiverr, just your traditional, like, let me change the logo. Like, what kind of name do I want now? And, and I lived in a building downtown, and I met a guy who, that was like my first $40,000 contract just to get, he owned lofts in the salon lofts in Austin. So he had me do a remodel job for him. But in that process, he introduced me to the lady who ended up doing our branding. So I think that it was a timing piece where I was literally in the building's conference room, just like looking at logos. The guy walked in. I was like, oh, hey, I knew him from around living in the building. And I was like, told him I was working on rebranding, trying to look at like, what do you think of this logo? And he was like, you need an actual brand, and you need and so you need to like have research and thought behind a brand name, not just like naming it after your son or something, So, so that's, it was just I think a combination of pieces. And then of course, when she gave me the $20,000, like, I was sticker shock. I was like, okay, I could have literally sent this to Fiverr, like something like that for way cheaper. But I believed. I think that the impetus was just that I really believed it was already proven, and I didn't want to go back to teaching. That wasn't an option. So I think I just believed that there was potential enough there to where I could turn that 20,000, which was made in payments over time, but turn that into a return. It's kind of a no-brainer a little bit in the plumbing industry, but also, and it has, like, how many times we had a $14,000 job almost a week after one of our vans was wrapped with a new branding, simply because they saw us in the parking lot, so the return on that was super quick on the branding piece. But I think that just to directly, concisely answer your question, it was knew that I had a proof of concept that I could get an easy return on. And then, that turned into hiring a dispatcher and a full-time CEO, those types of investments.
All right. So brand comes in. What did you for what you invested in? You got a new brand, but website, like some collateral, like when you say he saw it in the parking lot, was it just like, now the truck was a little more memorable?
Yeah, they're completely wrapped. Before they were just, white vans with literally like sticker logos.
Completely wrapped, yeah.
So now, they're bright blue. They, they have their individual icons. Like, there's just a lot of thought behind everything now. Like even the stamp, the logo stamp, it's very like Craftsman, very Austin oriented, local. It feels like it can be a local brand. And she studied, like, I paid a lot because she studied. And again, that was, 6 years ago. It's probably more now, but she studied, how our target person shops, like where do women shop? What are they looking at? What kind of brands are they trusting? All that stuff. There was a lot of like R&D research and stuff behind that. But what was your question?
No, you answered it. I wanted to know what you paid for. But what you paid for was a thoughtful strategy behind the brand. And then you made some smart decisions you have rolling billboards. I'm always surprised by like services companies that don't wrap their cars, because you have the rolling billboard. You just have to make it noticeable on the road. And you've seen, companies like Pink's do this recently. But even something as simple as there's a pool company here in town called Hill Country Pools. They have little red Ranger trucks and they do wrap it with Hill Country Pools. It's nothing like I'm sure yours are, or like what Pink's is doing, but at least you see it and it's memorable. And how many trucks just like don't even have that? Anyway, idea for Migo for later. So once that starts happening, now you start seeing the return, business starts growing, and you start hiring your internal staff. So now it's not just you doing everything. Who was the first hire internally?
No, my dad. My dad was doing the plumbing. Yeah.
No, I mean, but like in the office to answer the phone and do the paperwork and do.
Yeah, I hired a part-time dispatcher.
So were they your first hire?
They were, yeah. Because I hate answering phones. So I was like, I can't do this. Like every time the phone rings, I'm just like, why is the phone ringing? Personally. So anyway, yeah. So it was that was basically the bottom line was I wanted to delegate the thing that I hated doing the most, but obviously has to happen. So yeah, I just got a part-time dispatcher. That was a little challenging because it's like the phones aren't ringing 24/7, but you need someone available to answer it. So it's like, do you pay them full time? You know what I mean? They have to be available to full time. So that was a little bit of a learning curve. A couple of people there, like trying to figure out if we should just kind of have like virtual answering service versus, so, and I opted to have a live in-person local person that knows the local market and, more again, to protect the integrity of the brand. That again has developed now so much virtual assistants and all that, and AI, I'm sure they can give a more personal experience now, but we've always had local people here working.
Yeah. So those people come in, more and more people come into the business. I mean, I know you still have a small operation. Let's fast forward. Where are you now?
So we have a dispatcher. Now I have a COO that runs everything. And then we just lost a plumber. So we have 3 now. And so, yeah, it's been, and that was kind of over the holiday season. So that transition happened. So, and then it's myself, now that I have, again, with the support of that branding, like that's just my biggest, I've always shouted that from the mountaintop, like that the best investment I had was that branding, the brand Bible that comes with it. Cause now it's like, I can do the marketing. I can create campaigns super quick. Cause everything is just, so I do most of the marketing now. And yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah.
My dad is still around.
What's the biggest challenge finding qualified plumbers that protect the brand and do great work?
Yeah. That's the number one problem, period.
Yeah.
And it's because, there's obviously a large amount of trust, they get a gas card, they get they have access to just charge things on accounts like tools and supplies and stuff like that. And then, you're responsible for that. And as a woman, how they show up, the image, and how they're taking care of the home. And as a woman-owned business, like a large part of ours is, I wouldn't let anybody in my home that I don't want in my home, that I don't want in my, like safety. And I want to know who's coming to my door. So we put a lot of measurements like that in place to make the woman in the home, the mom in the home, the stay at home, the person that's alone feel comfortable. That's our target. And so leaving it better than we, don't give them more problems. Like you were just in their sink. Now you just left a mess. Now she has to clean on top of everything else she's already having to do, So things like that, just like putting tarps out, all those little details. And that's why it's challenging to find people that care. They're like, I'm just here to fix the toilet, period. And I'm just like, we're a brand. We're not just like going in and making a repair,
Yeah.
So
yeah, the service
and they have
is
to be
more
licensed. Yeah, like there's different levels. I don't think that people understand. Like I can't just pick up, I have a lot of family members who probably could become plumbers, who could like go fill the gaps, but they need to be licensed. So anyway, yeah, it's a challenge.
Do your plumbers have responsibility? I'm thinking about like ways to increase sales. Do your plumbers have responsibility for like the actual pricing, or do you compensate them for what they're able to sell in house? Like you've got an opportunity. Like I see like private equities companies come in and they say like, okay, well you want, they see services as a way to get in the home, right? And once you're in the home, land and expand. Like, are your plumber is physically in someone's home and having the conversation. Are you giving them sales responsibility? Could they upsell people? Like, or is that not part of the model?
No, ours isn't. So that's part of our marketing, is that we are not commission based, just because there's still a perception that like they're going to come in and haggle, yes, from a business perspective, that may limit kind of what the sell could be, might cap off, but it's again back to just, it was a brand decision. So I think, when they're in the home, we have flat rate pricing, things that have already, we have level of difficulty. They can add on, if they get into to replace a water heater and the access was more challenging, they can add, difficulty accessing. There's, so they can build it out. They do have that freedom to build out, but they're not incentivized in their pay through like commission based stuff.
So in some sense, you have like a pretty like part of your value proposition is the end-to-end service in making sure that the service isn't just the fix, right? The service is the whole experience from the moment they enter the home until the moment they exit and everything that happens in between. And then you've enabled them with a really simple pricing model, right? Because what you described to me, I hear as t-shirt sizes. It's it falls in this category, and then it's going to move up or it's going to move down based on some parameter, and they have flexibility to adjust within those parameters. But the parameters are really simple to communicate to somebody.
Yeah. It's kind of like, and they can, show that to the homeowner, and they can give the homeowner other options, like if you wanted to replace this is an option. Like there is an element of educating the homeowner.
Yeah.
And some homeowners want to know like, oh, I could have upgraded to this. I would have liked to have known that, so they definitely need to be educating, but is from a perspective of education, not upselling,
Right.
like make this ticket higher as high as you can get it and whatever you can get out of it. As opposed to just presenting all the options and organically letting them choose the higher dollar option if they choose. And at least they know, they walk away knowing that was an option,
Yeah.
And so, I think, it's very pretty simple with the flat rate pricing. And from a business perspective, it allows us to see kind of where, the predictability, once we know what's on the board, what's coming in, what's going out, and to keep an eye for like technicians that are maybe underperforming or constantly have higher tickets. It's like, okay, why are you always so low? Like what's going on here? So
yeah, no, it's okay. So this is really interesting. I want to pause for a sec. This is it's interesting why I bring the three of us together that have really different businesses. There are fundamental frameworks and models that are common. So this is really common to how I do it. And I do it for almost the exact same reasons that you described. We price consultants at a flat rate per month based on their seniority level and how much of their time they're going to dedicate, but it's flat rate. And it's you're either this seniority level and it's this rate, or it's this seniority level and it's that rate. And then there's an overage if, there's major scope issues and the client truly needs it. Sure, we have an overage and it's super simple. But I see like this simplicity I do it for a couple of reasons, just like you. One, it is our experience. We deliver a simple, transparent model to clients and to consultants. Two, I can track what works. It's like nothing, when you do everything custom, one, it would create a huge amount of complexity for me to model that out. I can't communicate it in a simple conversation. This way you meet someone and they say, well, what does it cost for this? And I say, well, if you want this, it's this. And if you want that, it's this. And like, that's pretty simple for them to understand, which I think helps them make a decision. Like ultimately it helps our conversion. I also can find the problems, because if someone is coming in and let's say like one of our consultants is coming back and we bill monthly if they're coming back and they're consistently saying, there's this overage, I know, well, we didn't scope this right. And I get to have a conversation that's proactive and helpful with the client about, this is not a bad thing. It's always, I hear you actually have more problems, right? And let's just make sure that our engagement with you, both from a time, but really from a capability standpoint, is right. Because sometimes we have the opportunity to bring in someone lower cost to do some of the other work, and we can shuffle things around. And like, ultimately that drives a lot more customer lifetime value for us and a much better experience for them. But if I was custom, we would never know that. They would tie what we do to the time that we spend, and our value is not tied to time.
Right.
Becca, do you, when you're thinking about the digital platform, obviously your pricing models are quite different, or will be quite different. You're in beta, but how are you thinking about keeping things simple for people?
Yeah. So it's interesting that this is being brought up, because I was literally whiteboarding this yesterday, because I'm playing with like a couple of different models. So for us, it's challenging because we are in a beta period. We're testing to see, you have to get users to like return on investment on the platform in order for you to start charging them. So you can't start charging immediately, like right out of the gate. You have to give people time to interact with the platform and to see the value of the platform before you can really start deciding how much can I charge for this, and understanding what people are willing to pay for it. And we have so many different models and personas, right? So from like even a vendor user, right? So this would be someone who's like an independent business or like an independent contractor. They would have like an individual subscription that they pay month over month, because they're getting X amount of referrals per wallet, right? Like they're getting continual business. And so the return on investment is there for them because they're increasing their income and revenue. And so they would have like an individual monthly subscription. But then now we've brought in a different user, which is the broker, right? And so we're going to brokerages and telling them, hey, this is a software platform that you can use for your agents, and we'll be onboarded. We'll be a part of their onboarding process when they're bringing agents into their brokerage. And so that model is more like an enterprise model, where it's like, how many agents do they have in the brokerage, right? So it's like, how much do we charge per agent that they want to bring onto the platform within their brokerage? And so it's almost like seats. Like if you go to like Monday or you go to like Asana, it's like you pay for X amount of seats. And so that's a way that we could even do the broker model. But then if you're looking at it, so there's like two different subscription types, where you have more like that enterprise, where you have the broker who's paying for all the users, and that's obviously going to be a much higher price point. And then you also have like the independent contractors, which that's going to be a lower price point. So we're still figuring out our business model. And I think that just takes more time and more users and more interactions and experience with taking information from people who are actually using the platform, because you can guess all day and you can hypothesize all day what you think you can charge people, but really your customers are going to tell you how much you can charge. And so, we can look at competitors, and I don't know how you, Deborah, and Lauren too, how both of you guys decided this is going to be my price point, and this is how much I'm going to charge people, and this is how I'm going to have my different like tiers and whatnot. But we're in that stage, right, where we're figuring that out. It's like, how much are they going to be willing to pay for this, right? But it will be a subscription model, which is pretty similar to what you guys do as well, where you have different packages, and with each package you provide X services, and this would be a better service, right? So it's very similar to that. But so that's what we're thinking right now.
Deborah, how did you get to this point? Like, did you experiment, or did you find that like operational simplification was needed to make it this simple? Because it's not what the market normally does.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of factors. It was, what do we need, right? Like just knowing what we need to break even operationally. And fortunately, like we still run really lean. We're remote, so we don't have a lot of certain expenses. So just knowing my break even point, and then like what we have to make, and then dividing that by, obviously just those basic formulas. How many calls, how many guys are on the field, how many calls on average, stuff like that. But then also it was seeing in Texas, like, because all the markets are different, but just what other plumbers, I was literally just Googling, like, what do plumbers in Austin try? And some people have their price, back then, base prices listed. So it was like a starting point. So I could know I was even in the right, range. But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, still there's people, our biggest thing is like, we compete against like a lot of handyman that can do things, and smaller businesses, frankly, that, like my dad's, my dads of the world, where he's like, I could just fix that for $85. And I'm like, well, we charge, because we're actually, so again, it's finding your customer, because my customer doesn't necessarily want the unlicensed plumber just kind of making a repair in their home. My customer values the fact that not just the user experience, but also that we're licensed, we're bonded, we're insured, all those things. And that they could call us in 8 months and we're still going to be here. We haven't just shut down our business,
Yeah.
So just sticking by that value, obviously, too. I think it was just like a combination.
Did you always not charge a commission or not have a commission-based model or is that something that you learned over time?
No, we never have. The last guy that we hired last year, I did offer, because I was like, okay, because there's a different level of tracking, like sophistication in the tracking.
Yeah.
Like now we need to, to know profitability and all that stuff, which we do anyway, but I was going to have to be very like detailed, more nuanced and detailed in tracking. And I hadn't been ready for that, or I just honestly didn't want to tackle it. And it wasn't part of our value proposition. So, but last year we offered it as a commission base, but he didn't want, he opted for like the traditional, what we normally do. And I think that's a lot of times like finding plumbers that are also salesmen can be challenging.
That just makes your product, it makes it even worse, your problem.
Yeah. And so a lot of generally plumbers in general don't want to be tied to like, you eat what you kill.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I wish
and then
more
we have
consultants did, but they don't either.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that would be nice, and I did have one plumber that was incentivized. He was just self-motivated. He wanted the opportunity to make more money. And so I let him he was my husband at the time. So obviously I was allowed to experiment with, and they'd be like, that's not working. You're going back to salary. So he was a little bit of a guinea pig because he was self-motivated too. And obviously he had skin in the game, I guess, so to speak. So, he was a good seller and wanted, to that opportunity. But there again, I didn't want, it worked for him as an individual financially, but I didn't want to have to do that to the business and put the business in a position to have to track all that. And I already have a hard time finding plumbers now. I need I'm not doing that.
I mean, we would say, let me professionalize what you said. You piloted a commission-based model, and through that pilot, you discovered that there were needlessly created complexities, both from a hiring standpoint and an internal management standpoint. Slide. Yes. So same thing. The truth behind why I do it this way, like why we're so flat rate, is because, like, again, it was just me, and I couldn't manage the tracking and the reporting of time. So I had to figure out something that was easy, because there was absolutely no way to do it I couldn't. Even now, it would be just like this, the cost of doing that from a human perspective, from the extra SaaS to set it up, from the extra SaaS to make it work. And then from the time I would spend explaining to our clients why the hours were spent is absolutely just not worth it. It's cheaper for me to actually take a little bit of a cut and say like, look, it's all good. Right. Sure. Like within 5 or 10%, we're all good. We're not going to worry about it.
Right.
There is a real cost of simplicity. It's interesting, Becca, like as you go through your beta, and there are, because you're a digital platform, you're not a service in the same way, like you're not going to face some of the same complexities, but that doesn't mean complexities don't exist, particularly with upfront engineering as you're trying to like manage cash early on. So, well, this has been, actually, I don't want to conclude it there. I want to ask you one more question. So Deborah, looking forward, where is Austin Plumbery headed? Like, I struggle with this myself. Sometimes I think I need to be a $10 million business. Sometimes I think like I need to work 20 hours a week and I have a nice little lifestyle business here. And like, I don't know, but where do you see it going?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. No, there definitely in the past I'm like, I'm going to exit. Like I need to get it to, X amount of money, and I'm not going to, exit until I'll leave, exit with $21 million. I had, $7 million annual revenue and at a 3 times multiple, I'll leave with 21 million. In theory, right? That was my idea. But as I've gotten, again, it's been 10 years, it's almost 10 years. So I guess as that time has, shifted personally, the things in my life have shifted. And now I think it's at this stage, and I'm not saying I'll never sell, because I do think, there's value. It's an asset. And we've, my father and I have spent our time and, everything like that, all of our resources into it. And to just like, okay, well, dad's retired now, let's just kind of let it dwindle away, seems almost like wasteful. So I think I'll sell something from it, whether it's just the book of business at that time, whether it's, whatever, right? But I've already had a lot of conversations with private equity firms and all that. And it's just like what I would need, what they need to see, it's like, I'm like, why don't you want it as is, and they're just like, we would need this. And I'm like, I don't like that. So yeah, I mean, to get from there to there is like, I don't know I want to impact my lifestyle enough. I don't know if I want that enough to impact my lifestyle. So I'll just conclude by saying I like my lifestyle business as is.
Becca's a dreamer. She is, what do you want to do? Like, where do you see, like, what's the end game for me? I mean, I know that it's nascent, but like if Becca's dreaming, why is she spending all this time doing this?
Well, I would say, I mean, the why is definitely different than the end result for me. Like the why for me, because we are so early stage, like the why is passion. The why is because I've experienced the problem. The why is because I want to make this really big, very, in my mind, it's just very like a friction experience for people, frictionless. Like I want to remove how complicated it is just to get trusted referrals. I've been on the receiving side, right, where I do social media for Lauren, where I've been a freelancer, where I've had people texting me and they're like, hey, I have a great referral for you. And I'm like, awesome. And then it's crickets. And then I don't know how to reach out to the person. And I'm like, that could have been, an additional $700 a month, right? Like for my work. And I lost that lead because of the middleman problem. So for me, I've experienced a problem. So my why has always been very passionate, very personal, very I've lived the problem and I've been in the real estate industry before, so I know the value that we bring to it. So the why is so different than the end goal for me. Of course, I want to make money because I'm not right now. So like, of course, like eventually I want to have a big payday. I want to be able to pay my team and the people who have invested their time into Migo. I want to be able to have that big monetary accomplishment for everyone, of course. But an exit strategy, at least from what I've learned in the time that I've been doing Migo, is that you shouldn't be too fixated on the end result because so many things are going to change along the way that when I first started, you have to be malleable, right? You have to be flexible. It doesn't mean you're moving in so many different directions that you don't have a focal direction that you're headed towards, but you do still have to be like flexible and malleable along the way. And so originally my intent was like, yeah, let's IPO it. Big dreams. I want to be Whitney Wolf, but with referrals. I want to be doing like the whole like gymnastic and cutting the ribbon and being like, yeah, I'm awesome. Right. But there has to be realism in that too, where, we're focused towards like the real estate industry. And so like, realistically, we may just go super vertical and there could be an acquisition from like a really big brokerage or a really big, realtor or Zillow, or like there's so many more exit strategies and options out there now that my perspective has really changed from just like a vision to reality, where it's like, okay, if we IPO, that would be great, but what required to get there, we would have to expand horizontally into so many different markets, and we'd have to make a lot more revenue and really grow this thing out to expand, cross industry. But there's also that opportunity if we go very vertical in the real estate space. And then if we're required, I mean, someone offers me $500 million for Migo in like 10 years, I might consider that, so we don't really have, I mean, the thing is we're so early on, and I don't like ambiguity per se, but you do have to be like open-minded to understanding that there are so many different options for an exit strategy. So I don't know what that is yet. I just think staying open-minded is the best way to be right now, because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into like one end goal and then miss out on an opportunity that could have been even more lucrative for you. So that's at least my perspective on it.
We'll see what happens when you get to
We'll see.
I feel like Deborah and I, both of our businesses are kind of in the same stage.
Yeah.
Where they're great lifestyle businesses. They fund our lives happily and well. And I go back and, like I said, I go back and forth on like, God, well, one day maybe I could, like, what's my number? And the reality is, for the things that I have to do to get it to big enough to be interested in a bigger multiple that would be interesting to me to not do it. Some days I have the energy and some days I don't. And it's like using the energy on the days that you have it and conserving.
Yeah, but then knowing you're gonna, like, if you do, like, let's say you run with that energy on those days that you do have it, it's like you're going to have to keep that energy beyond that. It's like then you're gonna have to just stay on, and like right now I get to choose when I'm on and not, kind of.
Yeah, that's you know what? That's a great observation. In that doing that, you do lose the autonomy that you have created. Wow. I wish I had a therapist. I would take that to them, and maybe that's one of my reasons. I was going to say, so you said let's go back to your marketing investment. You invested $20,000. And at the time, that was a huge chunk of the safety net. Well, to get to the next point, it's not $20,000. It's easily $200 in a quarter. And that is like, oh God, do I really I really want to do that? It's not just the money that's out. It's like, then you're bringing in an additional person or whatever, and an additional vehicle,
addition. So it's like obviously everything's growing. That's the point. But it's like, I'm very aware of what additional things that's going to bring. And I'm like, I don't want 4 more heads to have to manage, or the problem, like 4 more people to have to manage, and then be put in a position where it's like, well, I'm not going to manage them. So now I need to get a plumbing manager. And, and it's just like, are those the problems? I always go back to like, are those the problems that I want to solve?
Right. Because we started before we joined you. I'm not going to say where you are, but you're not in Austin. You're in a really nice place right now, taking this remotely, living your life. And like, the reality is, when you make some of those choices, that is not guaranteed. I like to spend 6 weeks a year traveling. Now that my son is young, we won't be able to do it in 2 years because he'll have camp. So I like to do it now. If I had a team of people that needed to be directed by me, there's no way I could do that. So,
well, you've done a really good job. I will say this, you've done a really good job of being able to hire people on your team that can take care of your business, even when you're not fully participating in your business, when you're traveling. Like you've done, like you've created systems and like processes that are self-sufficient, so you can take that time, which is like, I always try to mimic that. That's what I learned from you the most. I think I learned so many things from you, but like, that's one of the things that I've noticed that you've done with your business that allows you also the freedom to go out and travel. Yeah.
Thank you. That's true.
Am I frozen?
You won't be frozen on the real one. Don't worry. Deborah, it sounds like you've done that too. Like, you've made a real investment in the internal operation.
Exactly. And knowing,
but to get to the next phase, you're like, and then there's more people. It's the people part of it.
It's the people part. Yeah.
Becca, these are first word problems that you will have soon.
No, I love these conversations. I've been tucking away notes in the back of my brain because I didn't want to be sitting here like scribbling notes on the podcast. But I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. I think one of the number one things that that I think is the most like applicable to me right now is when Deborah was talking about like what's the amount of money that I need in the bank account to be able to say, oh, I'm going to start spending this on marketing, because right now we're not doing any paid advertising. So everything that I've done is bootstrapped, and Lauren knows this, but everything that we've been able to accomplish has been bootstrapped and self-funded by me. So like, we don't do any paid advertising. It's like in that beginning stage of your company, Deborah, where you're going out and you're talking to, you were talking to the, not title companies, remind me, you're doing the home warranty companies. The home warranty companies, and you were just getting organic business that way to drive revenue into the business. I'm doing that with users, but they're free right now. Eventually they will be paying. But in order for me to go out and like fundraise so that I could actually spend money in marketing, all the investors want to see revenue, which is like, that's fair. I get it. Like, it's just the timing of everything.
Yeah, even me.
The economy, cost of capital. Like, it's just the way that it is. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Honestly, it guarantees that I prove out my model even more and that I have something that will produce a profit. Right. But if I don't get funding, right, this is like a long way of me saying, like, if I don't get funding before we get to revenue, now I'm looking at, okay, well, how much revenue are we going to make once we start charging people? And then like, how much do I want to be making an MRR to be able to say, okay, I want to start doing some paid advertising? Because I think a lot of the ads, initially we thought were going to be digital, but now I'm starting to think, I'm like, well, we're such a community oriented platform, doing bands and doing stuff that is more Austin localized in people's like faces, right, would probably be a good strategy. But anyways, you just got my wheels turning where I'm like, okay, how much, because I haven't spent time on that. It's like, how much do we need to be hitting in monthly recurring revenue for me to justify spending money on like marketing and not doing it cheap? Because it sounds like save and then do the quality investment, because the return on investment is there because you're going to attract more business.
I will 100% back that up.
That was helpful.
Yeah. I've done a ton of cheap stuff. It does not work.
Yeah. And it lasts, like those assets, like not just the literal assets, but like the branding piece of it, or I don't know what the equivalent of like the branding, the impact that my branding has had. I don't know what that equivalent is for you of like, what could be that impactful? Like those are the things that'll last, that are worth the investments. So maybe like, what is that first? And if it's paid advertising, or if it's, whatever, like what is that first thing? Yeah. I'd love to talk more with you about your business.
Well, this is great. I have an idea for you, Becca. I'll follow up in our advisory meeting next week on this topic. I don't want to share my idea in public.
Thank you for the reminder.
This has been such a fun and energetic conversation. I am really liking this model. And Deborah, I always love talking to you. You're such an inspiration. I hope you know that. Maybe you don't, but you are. And like whatever I can do to support your business, I'm happy to. Just let me know. I'm sure Becca's the same way. But thanks so much for joining us. And that's it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. Thank you.